Hello guys, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about Ryan O'Reilly and him being traded from Buffalo Sabres onto the St. Louis Blues and all the assets that came back to Buffalo. Now Ryan O'Reilly has been a great center for the Colorado Avalanche and the Buffalo Sabres for a long time. He's been one of the most reliable centers in the league, and he's been fantastic with a pretty terrible team in Buffalo, and he's been one of the more underrated guys throughout the NHL, and that's just what I believe. And he's been in the rumors for a while, pretty much this past few years now, to be traded away from Buffalo. We've had quite a few suitors and quite a few teams that made sense, but the St. Louis Blues end up pulling the trigger with the Buffalo Sabres today to finalize it. Now, of course, St. Louis already having a busy day in both signing David Perron and Tyler Bozak today to big contracts, and they've already had a pretty sizable free agency in just one day. So having Ryan O'Reilly is the big spotlight on an already big spotlight in St. Louis right now. And with this trade, they definitely bolster up their center core, and it's highly needed in the first place. Adding both Tyler Bozak and Ryan O'Reilly will definitely strengthen the core that needed a center and needed some badly, and I guess they did it. They went out and got two good ones. Of course, I speculated if Tyler Bozak is overpaid or not, or whatever, but we know that they have the center core for the future now. Now let's get to the nitty-gritty of the details of this trade. Of course, Ryan O'Reilly is the one asset being sent back to the St. Louis Blues. No cap retained, so he's at $7.5 million until 22-23. So he's still at that baseline contract, so nothing going on there. He's age 27, had 61 points with the Buffalo Sabres last season, and in my opinion is an elite two-way center in the NHL, a good first-line center, and probably will be their first-line center for the St. Louis Blues. They definitely fill that hole with this trade, and it's a hole that I feel like St. Louis needed to fill, and Ryan O'Reilly, he certainly does. He's going to add a lot of character, a lot of defense, a lot of offense to this team, and I feel like Ryan O'Reilly has been pretty underrated throughout the whole time in Buffalo. So we're going to see what he's really made of here in St. Louis. And going back to the Buffalo Sabres, you have two picks. The 2019 first-round pick, which is St. Louis's. Then you have the 2021 second-round pick, which will be far away, but still is pretty high. It's a second-round pick, so it's still up there. You have the 2019 first-round pick, so you have that. You have that big asset as well. Two pretty big draft picks. Whether or not they're close or not is the big question, but two pretty big draft picks, both in the first two rounds. The next piece, you have Tage Thompson, who played 41 games this season with the St. Louis Blues, had 9 points. He's age 20, and what makes me really interested in him was he was born in Phoenix, Arizona. I just like seeing that storyline. And Tage Thompson, it seemed like the St. Louis Blues games that I was watching, he was fantastic, and he was all over the ice. I felt like he was great, and the stats really show it, but I felt like he was doing a lot of little things that don't really show on the score clock. And with Tage Thompson, he's young, he's 20 years old, and he got the chance in St. Louis, and I feel like he played pretty decent. He has some room to grow, and if Buffalo uses him correctly, uses his ice time correctly, puts him with the right teammates, he'll definitely have a good NHL career. And Tage Thompson, he's very interesting on how he could develop. And then you have the two players that have major salary coming through this trade. The first is Patrick Berglund, who had played 57 games with the St. Louis Blues this season, had 26 points. I think he had like 17 goals or something like that. Missed some games, so if he has a healthy season next season, which is the big if with Buffalo, he'll be pretty solid. He's at age 30, so he's declining a little bit there. He's at $3.85 million until 21-22, so it's a substantial contract, but one that Buffalo probably needed to take back to give away something like Ryan O'Reilly, and to get those draft picks, and of course, Tage Thompson. You also have the other guy in Vladimir Sabatka, who played or had 31 points this season. He's age 30 as well, $3.50 million until 19-20 season. So he's not as long as Patrick Berglund, not as expensive as Patrick Berglund, and not as good, I'd say. And I don't think it's really close, but a nice little depth player for Buffalo, and some cap to take on as, of course, trading Ryan O'Reilly. They want to get some cap back for that. But to me, this is kind of frustrating as a person, as a hockey fan. It was very interesting to see where Buffalo was going to place next season. I was very hopeful for their chance next season, and giving up Ryan O'Reilly for, albeit decent players, giving up Ryan O'Reilly is a huge piece for them gone, and with that, I don't think they have a chance at the playoffs. They had a solid team. Giving up Ryan O'Reilly to any extent is going to damn your team, in my opinion. With the Buffalo Sabres, they had a solid chance, but giving up Ryan O'Reilly is going to definitely lessen their chance to make the playoffs, and definitely in my eyes. So to me, with this trade, I see a little bit of a wasted potential to where Buffalo could be next season. I was hopeful that, you know, having Ryan O'Reilly and having Dawn, having the signings that they've had already, that would bolster them, but they decided to go another route and not really go on a rebuild because they got Patrick Berlin and Zabaga, guys in their 30s, but I feel like it's kind of a move that goes for the future and is now at the same time. I mean, who knows? Who knows what St. Louis is next season? That 2019 first could be very, very good next year. I mean, we saw that with Calgary this season, or last season with the Hamonic deal. Oh, we all thought Calgary was going to be a major step up, and they're going to be fantastic this season, and they end up being a, what was it, like 13 or 12 overall pick, and Islanders have that pick and draft, I'm pretty sure, Dobson. So we've seen, you know, teams trade their first round pick thinking that they're good, but they're really not. So St. Louis is not quite a contender yet, so they can still be in that race to miss the playoffs, and that'd definitely be great for Buffalo. And right now, I don't really see a clear winner. If I had to pick one, it would probably be St. Louis, because they didn't have to give too much for a first-line center nowadays, which, of course, we see in the market. You have to give a lot for him. Tage Thompson, I feel like, will be his future second liner. He hasn't really shown quite that yet, but I feel like he will become that. That first-round pick, we'll have to wait and see what that turns out to be, that 2021 second-round pick. We have no idea what happens. With Zabaga and Berglund, they'll be two solid players that help them in the now. So for right now, I don't feel like St. Louis had to give up too much to get Ryan O'Reilly, and I feel like the deal sways in their way, but we haven't seen what those draft picks turn out to be. We haven't seen what Tage Thompson turns out to be, which of course is the big factor here. For me, I'm placing my bets on St. Louis to win this trade, just by a little bit. And for me, it was a solid return for Buffalo, but not quite one that I'd give up for a first-line center like Ryan O'Reilly. But it's nice to see some big trades coming out of the first day of free agency, where it's going to be interesting to see how many more big trades happen throughout the next week, or the next month, or just in the offseason in general. But we've already seen one big one happen on the first day, which is fantastic. Ryan O'Reilly being sent to the St. Louis Blues is definitely a blockbuster, and one that, you know, one team will regret. I feel like this will be one team, or one deal that just sways the other way. With St. Louis, you know, you're giving up a decent chunk. Not as much as I thought they were going to have to give up for a guy like Ryan O'Reilly, but a decent chunk of solid pieces. So it's going to be interesting how those develop, and if Ryan O'Reilly, you know, sways St. Louis into a contender, and sways them into a long playoff run. Because you gotta remember, Ryan O'Reilly doesn't have really that much playoff experience, playing with Colorado when they weren't that great, and playing with, of course, Buffalo. He has some learning to do, and even if as age 27, when he seemed like a veteran on Buffalo, he doesn't have that much playoff experience, which could factor in. I would give him a little bit of a pass on his first go-around. And that's the big thing for them going to the next season, is how he'll play, and of course how St. Louis will play. But that's whatever for today, guys. Again, make sure to like and subscribe. Tell me below what you think of this trade. Did Buffalo win? Did St. Louis win? Who do you think won? What do you think about the assets traded? I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.